Yo, I'm Albert von Stolen and I'm here to talk about why K-pop is imitating American music. K-pop's obsession with imitating the American music industry and its desire to compete internationally against them makes the K-pop stars themselves easily replaceable as the Korean music industry fabricates them in large numbers to see what sticks in the international market, effectively removing the Korean soul from their music as well as crushing the souls of the K-pop stars themselves. I'm explored here in this video. Let's go! I'll go into a disclaimer. This is not me saying that Koreans don't have idols which last. As a matter of fact, they do. They also have an older genre of music which had produced their share of singers which have lasted the test of time. Trot. The problem is that K-pop has been busy making more idols at the expense of quality. Before we go into K-pop itself, let's go to where this thing's from, South Korea. Specifically, South Korean history. In 1945, Japan was driven out of the Korean peninsula by both the Soviet Union and the United States of America. This later ended with a defeat for the Japanese. In 1948, the Korean peninsula was divided into two. North Korea, which was led by a young communist revolutionary by the name of Kim Il-sung and was bankrolled by the Soviet Union, and South Korea, which was ruled by Syngman-rhee and was bankrolled by the Americans. In 1950, Kim Il-sung invaded South Korea in order to reunify it. This gave us the Korean War that's still technically ongoing, but the main bulk of the fighting ended in 1953. This led to a period of poverty and reconstruction in both Koreas. As this is about K-pop, I'm focusing on the South here. In 1960, the April Revolution happened. This was a series of demonstrations which called for the ouster of President Rhee. He resigned late into April 1960. The following year, an army general by the name of Park Chung-hee overthrew President Yoon Bo-son in a putsch. This led to South Korea being under a series of authoritarian military rulers until 1993, with the election of Kim Yong-sam as president of South Korea. Life under the military regimes was not one which allowed for much freedom of expression as we commonly understand it to be. Entertainment was quite stifled as every television station and radio station was under the government. Anime was banned due to a ban on Japanese products until said ban was removed in 2004 due to warming ties between Japan and South Korea at the time. While South Korea had known of American pop music since the 1960s, the South Koreans themselves were unable to get themselves to create K-pop until the democratization of the 1990s. Those singers in South Korea that were around either were employed by the military, were in church choirs, performed in restaurants, or were in local record labels. When the country democratized in 1993, the record labels decided to employ a similar business model as South Korean television channels at the time have done. Back in the 1980s, ballads by Trot singers became wildly popular. As such, these would be televised under the government's TV channels. These TV channels provided everything: studio bands, choreographers, music arrangers, conductors, dance groups, lyricists, and songwriters. With democratization came in privatization and opening up the markets. Those government TV channels were bought up by private citizens and companies. New ones were also set up. These record labels also provided in-house training for prospective idols, and it's notoriously in-depth. I'll get to this later on. Now we get to the main thesis of the video. K-pop's idols have become easily replaceable. This is quite noticeable when it comes to the amount of K-pop bands and singers coming out nowadays. Back in the 1990s up to the late chunk of the 2000s, most K-pop singers and groups were known for being timeless. In the early 2000s, the singer known as Rain was very popular among the few fans of K-pop outside of Korea and many within Korea. In terms of bands, the likes of BTS, known outside of Korea as TVXQ, Super Junior, Wonder Girls, and Girls' Generation were very popular. But something had changed. Sometime around the late 2000s, K-pop bands had decided to crank up the quantity scale at the expense of quality. More timeless singers and groups either gave way to the more easily replaceable ones, or some groups have shrunken in size. The likes of UKISS, Piggy Dolls, IBI, BTS, Blackpink, Sistar, EXO, Intuit, BTOB, among many others showed up. Some of these names are quite mainstream, namely BTS, Blackpink, and EXO. However, the other ones such as Piggy Dolls, Sistar, and UKISS, those are quite obscure now. Piggy Dolls and Sistar in particular have disbanded years ago. This was because of how the Korean wave was booming with the success of both K-pop and K-dramas. With K-dramas, they use K-pop songs for their theme songs and for usually romantic scenes. Those made K-pop even more successful. However, there's a massive problem. There's plenty of supply trying too hard to meet an insatiable demand not just in South Korea, but globally. This makes K-pop idols and their groups come and go very quickly. While these singers and groups usually have fans even years after how some have disbanded, it's nowhere as many as what the big ones such as BTS or EXO have. Thus, this creates all sorts of problems. For one, this makes the training of K-pop idols look more like a gamble nowadays than it once was. I mentioned earlier that K-pop idol training is quite in-depth. I'll explain it here. The entire process of finding a K-pop idol takes certain steps, all paid for by an entertainment company. 1. Talent scouts and talent contests. This ensures that the prospective trainees get chosen. 2. Auditions. This makes things more formal. This also makes sure that the kids who want to become idols get their parents' consent first. 3. Training contracts. These things usually last for 2 to 4 years. As such, these tells trainees that if he or she wants to be an idol, he would or she would have to accept the training first. 4. The training itself. These are musical training, regular physical exercises, dance training, photography training, acting, language training, etiquette, dieting, among other things. The musical training itself ranges from how to read musical notes to how to actually sing. This is notorious for its intensity. Add in the fact that these trainees compete with each other just to actually debut, among with how only a small percentage tends to debut at any one time, means that the costs will pile up. Lastly, debut. This means setting up the venue, hiring songwriters to write the new idol's debut song, among many other things. Now, if all the training led to a successful debut, the K-pop idol's entertainment company will get a return on their investment and the idol will get paid. How much depends on how much the production and training costs being subtracted from the income produced by an idol's debut concert, TV appearance, commercial appearance, endorsement deal, whichever. Then, the difference from that will be later subtracted to pay for any group in the entertainment company that flopped their debut. Yeah, not much. And that's just the major agencies such as SM Entertainment and JYP Entertainment. More minor ones? Something similar happens except that a profit, meaning income minus production and training costs, would not be subjected from a failed debut. There's rumors that tell of failed K-pop trainees being told to pay in the tens of thousands of dollars if he or she fails the debut. Another problem stems from the fact that there's more than enough idols and bands whenever anyone watches these K-pop TV shows. It's quite easy to notice. Music banking, Kigayo, Pops in Soul, you name it. There are so many idols and groups in it. If you ain't careful, it'll overwhelm you. There's nothing wrong if you like multiple idols and groups. Personally, I like listening to some songs from Rain, Buell, and Real Girls Project from time to time. That being said, however, trying to know all these new groups which debut almost all the time is quite painful even for the most devoted of superstans. Like I said earlier, it's overwhelming, especially for those of us who've been around since the first two waves of K-pop when it's less crowded. To quote producer Kang Shin-hyuk from Idolmaster KR, "Competition is good for growth." That being said, it's just gonna get more competitively crowded as time goes on. More problems arise when some of the idols have trained since they were little kids. I get that some of us want to be actors and singers when we were kids, but it's not an easy lifestyle as we think. This entails a whole lot of training just to make sure to pass some audition later on. Then there's the fact that some trainees drop out of school, usually in their teen years, just to focus on training to be an idol. In a country such as South Korea, where degrees are a status symbol due to centuries of education being seen as a means to gain employment, not having one can cause problems. If a trainee can afford to take distance education classes or be able to train after school, that's all well and good. But not all trainees are able to do this. The fact that some idols are already training since childhood also causes a major problem. Developmental ones. Since these idols may not have a normal childhood, how will they be able to deal with other people, especially in a job where they have to entertain them? I mentioned earlier that K-pop's hyper-competitive. This brings me to another issue, getting more in your face. This was done before me by CCK Philosophy. Here's the video in the description. The problems of the K-pop industry are not just confined in reality because the topics they're in are also talked about in Korean fiction. The Korean drama, The Idolmaster KR, was aired back in 2017 and it was based on Bandai Namco's The Idolmaster video game series. Yes, this is about the most obscure part of the entire Idolmaster franchise. What does a K-drama based off a Japanese video game series ever have anything to do with K-pop? Simple. The Idolmaster KR had a mostly idol cast compared to most K-dramas. And the idols play as themselves rather than doing some cameo role as they usually do in K-dramas. This K-drama talks about how easily replaceable idols are, how hyper-competitive K-pop is, the issue of stalking by some stranger, having to deal with an entertainment company going under, being passed over for someone more beautiful, being a former idol, having to train newbies into trainees, trainees having to deal with being stuck as trainees before ever debuting. This has it. Most of the main character idol cast are in their own group made for the show, Real Girls Project. The topics in this drama have happened in real life, whether we want to think of it or not. As for the stalking part, at least it ain't a saying or what the Westerners call a stan. The part about idols being replaceable shows up as early as episode 1. Granted, Suwa had died 1 year before the show's events and the group Red Queen must go on. But no tribute to Suwa before the comeback concert shows us this point well. This is especially because Red Queen's comeback concert happened on Suwa's death anniversary, Talk about disrespect. The hyper-competitiveness of K-pop starts off early when producer Kang Shin-hyuk invites some K-pop industry experts to judge the trainees of 825 Entertainment when the latter performs Red Queen's song Asia. The 825 Entertainment trainees fail at performing this, and producer Kang's reason for inviting industry experts over is to tell the trainees that the K-pop industry is very competitive. He then organizes a survival tournament with the stipulation that the highest scoring team can debut. He then divided the trainees into the debut team, which had the trainees from Pure Entertainment, and the rookie team, which consisted of aspiring and troubled young women brought in by company CEO Shin Min-chul. Most of the show's plot is about this survival competition, along with how it helped the girls grow as people. This is epitomized with that producer Kang quote from earlier. The stalking part was when a paparazzi, who was supposed to take pictures of Nakyung from Red Queen, decided to fanboy over Yukika and stalk her. This was a subplot for a fourth of the show. Good thing Yukika and Jane had caught the stalker, only for the stalker to catch Suji comforting producer Kang. The part about an entertainment company going under? That's when Pure Entertainment from earlier went bankrupt, and so 825 Entertainment bought out that bankrupt entertainment company. Being passed over for someone more beautiful? Yes, that has happened to Youngju. It was revealed that Pure Entertainment's former producer had favored Nakyung, who later went to Red Queen over Youngju. There's also a part about someone being a former idol. Jiwon had betrayed her best friend Yeun in order to become an idol. While Jiwon did become an idol, this meant having to deal with the fact that her best friend is gone. Since Jiwon and her unit had failed as a group, they were disbanded. She was later found working in a shoe store dancing to sell shoes outside. After this, she was brought in to 5 Entertainment by the CEO himself. It can be argued that Jiwon's arc from episodes 13 to 18 was a redemption arc, as she was able to fit in with the debut team and even mend her friendship with Yeon. Training newbies into full-blown trainees was the entire point of the rookie team. While they struggled at first, they did get better at it. Having trainees stay as trainees for years before debuting was the entire point of the debut team. They finally got their debut at the end of the show alongside the newbie team. Producer Kang is a very sneaky man, as it was revealed that the survival competition was nothing more than a way to get the trainees from Pure Entertainment and the newbies to work together. We even get a bit about some kid who trained from childhood. Yes, this is Youngju's backstory from episode 1. Truly, this show has it all and more. Please do watch it if you get the time. One thing I've noticed is that very few K-pop idols ever get to come back from obscurity. As for K-pop bands, the chances of one never having a reunion is rarer, but it does happen. Both are due to how oversaturated the K-pop industry is. There's one example, however, for the former who comes to mind here. Rain. If you don't know who he is, let me tell you. This man's had a career in K-pop since the late 1990s. Yes, he's been there for so long that it's impressive. He's the man who brought K-pop to America. Yes, you heard me right. In 2005, Rain made his world tour called Rainy Day 2005 Tour to perform his album, It's Raining. In February 2006, he had the last leg of his concert in the tour in New York City. From there, demand for more Rain went up. His next American concert was on December 2006 in Sin City itself, Las Vegas, Nevada. This was with his album Rain's World. In April of the same year, he got noticed by Time magazine. On their online poll, he defeated Stephen Colbert by 100,000 votes. 2 years later, he appeared on Stephen Colbert's show where he did a dance-off with the host on a Dance Dance Revolution machine. He also did some acting in Hollywood. In the same year, he played as Tejo Togokan in the live-action Speed Racer film. The following year, he played as Rizzo in the film Ninja Assassin. Rain's fame broke the barrier to entry for K-pop in the West. Without him, the likes of BTS and EXO being popular in the West will not happen. I'll put a disclaimer before BTS and EXO fans get mad at me for this. I am not saying that they have no talent. Clearly they do have it in abundance, hence their fame. What I am saying is that prior to Rain, K-pop was not mainstream in the Western world. Back then, very few people in places like the United States of America and Canada listened to K-pop. This changed when Rain showed up because he broke the barrier to entry for K-pop singers and groups. We have to keep in mind that Western nations have their own pop idols. Back in 2006, it's Selena Gomez, Lady Gaga, Britney Spears, among others. But Rain's popularity showed us that even a K-pop guy can make it there. Because of this, the West became more interested in K-pop, which led to the likes of BTS and EXO becoming famous in that part of the world. But wait, there's more. In 2011, he served in the Korean military for 2 years as per the South Korean military conscription laws. He even became a promotional ambassador by the military man. The following year, it was confirmed that he was dating Kim Tae-hee. As this was during his military training, he was investigated but was cleared of all charges. In 2014, he had converted to the Catholic Church due to the reason of faith. 3 years later, he married longtime girlfriend Kim Tae-hee. Where's Rain now? Last I've heard of him, he's back doing K-pop songs in South Korea, playing roles in Korean dramas, and helping train younger K-pop idols. This idol is one of those few who have withstood the test of time itself. Since being a K-pop idol is a stressful job, how does one handle the various problems in it? One of the problems that a K-pop idol always has to deal with are haters. These range from people who just hate the idol in question to those who actively harm said idols. The latter is what in the K-pop fandom is called an anti-fan. Normally, what famous people do when it comes to hate comments online are either to ignore those, clap back at those, be angry at those, or be spiteful in responding about it. A K-pop idol had done something so unorthodox that it worked. This idol's name? Amber Liu. She was a member of the K-pop girl group FX from 2009 to September 2019. Unlike a certain Canadian comedian who danced through her haters' comments in 2019 and became infamous for it, back at the same month when Amber left FX, September 2019. On October 2017, Amber Liu had made a video poking fun at the hate comments directed at her called, "Where is my chest?" I'm not gonna spoil this video here, as I'll post the video link in the description. While I'm not gonna spoil this, I'm not gonna be silent on what makes her response unique either. Instead of screaming at the camera, clapping back at the haters with some weak zinger, or being spiteful about it, she read the hate comments and turned those around with a bit of self-deprecating humor mixed in. I get that self-deprecating humor is a rare skill to have, but Amber managed to make it work. Despite the title and the nature of the video, this one didn't cause controversy because everyone who was watching it ended up laughing at the absurdity of the hate comments. She made her audience agree with her. Now, Amber is still being a solo K-pop idol since 2019, while the comedian from earlier gets mocked whenever she uploads her pathetic excuse for comedy online. So, here comes an important question. How do I know all of this? Simple. While I grew up with anime, I did know about K-pop back in high school and college. I've also been watching my share of Korean dramas since the mid-2000s. With K-pop, I got into it just to see what the fuss was about. The likes of Rain, Psy, Buell, among others, did make some really good music. I've also seen how Filipinos ended up in K-pop. UKIS had Alexander Eusebio, who was later kicked out due to a lack of popularity. He later ended up appearing in the local entertainment industry here in the Philippines. Then there's Sandara Park. She was already a singer and actress in the Philippines before joining the K-pop girl group 21 back in 2009. With 21's disbandment in 2016, she just became an actress in South Korea. I live in the Philippines and I've seen what K-pop is earlier than those at most of us in the West. K-pop's been around in the Philippines since the early 2000s. Back then, the likes of Rain and Boa weren't as popular as Taiwanese pop music nor local music. With the departure of the Taiwanese around 2005 to 2006, K-pop as a genre started to get stronger. By the late 2000s, Filipino music gave way to K-pop in American pop music. I get that K-pop's emphasis is on the visual, but it can be done without imitating popular American musicians and bands. At least Trot was and still is Korean in terms of songs and dances. Yes, American pop music is popular, but aping it does not make any popularity that comes off on that last for long, especially with the temporary nature of pop music trends. So, K-pop should just be more original in its presentation by drawing from its Korean heritage, and it should be more universal in its themes by appealing to the universal human condition other than just chasing after fame and trends. Why? Because K-pop, much like Trot before it, should rise and sink due to its own merits. K-pop kinda already did this by using the timeless appeal of classical music, which is why it was able to outcompete vapid general pop music in the first place. Appealing more to universal themes can make it last longer, and drawing from its Korean heritage makes it more authentic. Please share and subscribe this video for more videos.